Welcome to Vita COLITUR. I'm Lynn Morgan-Rosser. This episode features part one of an interview I did with Donna Glee Williams, author of the novels The Night Field, Dreamers, and The Braided Path, along with many other short stories and poems. She's a world traveler, a PhD, a registered nurse, a dream worker who leads groups in discovering the deep hidden messages and meanings from their dream lives. And she's also someone who continually surprises me with amazing stories and facts from her life. I can honestly say that she inspires me. The Night Field was so inspiring to me, in fact, that I created an EP of songs with her permission and consultation titled Songs for the Night Field as a sort of companion work to her novel. I've had the pleasure of working together with Donna Glee several times in bookstores, on stages, or for community gatherings, where she has given a talk on her book, and I performed the music, sometimes along with videos I created for a multimedia experience. Now, this interview happened in March of 2023, before The Night Field officially came out, and when I was working towards having Vita COLITUR be more of a traditional podcast. Life hit me hard from a couple of directions in the form of breast cancer and Hurricane Helene here in the western North Carolina mountains in 2024, and Vita COLITUR was postponed until 2025. But the topic and insights she gives are still as deep and as fresh as the day we recorded it. The concept for this podcast episode was going to be inspiration, and I thought I would title it rather poetically, Gathering Sparks for Stars. In the last episode of Vita COLITUR, I broke down my 6 Kimana practices. Kimana stands for kindness, inspiration and breathwork, meditation, awareness, nature, and activity. So this fits perfectly as a continuation of my previous videos. It's a conversation on artistic inspiration with a brilliant woman whom I've had the privilege to call friend. Without further ado, here is part one of the interview with Donna Glee Williams. Donna Glee Williams, my dear friend, thank you so much for being here. I know on your business card it says author, poet, and dream worker, and I want to touch on all of these aspects of you. Thank you for joining me for this season of Vita COLITUR.
Lynn, I'm so happy to be with you. I've looked forward to this conversation for a long time and grateful to be part of your opening season.
So you have a novel called The Night Field, and I wondered if you could tell our listeners just a little bit about the story of The Night Field.
Well, yes, Lynn. The Night Field is a story that happens in a world that isn't this world, but it has a lot of parallels and similarities to this world. But in the landscape of the Night Field, the story opens with a world where there are people that live in a good, sustainable balance with their environment, with their trees, with the animals, with the waters, the fish. And my main character, Pinboy, is a little girl who grows up in that, taking that entirely for granted, until finally, one year, the monsoon rains bring down on her land a terrible, killing stink that makes people sick and kills the flowers, the fruit, makes the trees sick, and they labor under this plague of stench for a number of years as she grows up And finally, because she is one of the people who is called to care for the trees, it becomes her job, her quest, her charge to climb up the never-climbed cliff to get to the world above where this stink must come from.
Wow, that is quite a setup, and it speaks to so many issues environmentally, and I'm assuming this stink is going to come from another culture that has less environmental awareness. Is that true?
Yes, but for these people, they didn't even know there was another culture. That land above the cliff was what they thought was the land of their ancestors. So when Pinboy climbs that cliff and finds herself in this strange hell world with people that don't speak her language, she misunderstands everything and falls into every kind of trouble, as has happened with many people in cultures who have met an unexplainably crazy overculture that they've had contact with after no preparation for it.
I really deeply appreciate that whole concept. So I want you to tell me the story of your inspiration for this. What were those sparks for you that you gathered up and turned into this entire novel, this beautiful picture?
Oh, so many sparks, Lynn. For a fantasy writer, when I look at my own stories, I see almost nothing original in them. Everything comes from somewhere. And I guess the most immediate somewhere for this story was someone sent me a little micro video of the tree bridges of the Khasi people in the wettest part of India. And this beautiful idea of architecture built from living wood was so deeply inspiring to me. Now imagine, in the wettest place on earth, almost everything will rot, but living wood won't. So the Khasi people have been using living trees to create amazingly sculpted bridges across their rivers for at least 500 years. We know that some of those bridges are that old. And it just touched my heart so much. And that inspiration led to me getting the character of Pinboy, who at first was sort of meant to be something like a Gandhi character or a Mandela character who wound up in prison and then came out to be the leader of their people. And that didn't actually wind up being what happened, but that was the original inspiration. Another little bit that got in there was the movie The Gods Must Be Crazy that I saw probably decades ago, but it touched me very deeply. And another thing that is clearly an anchor point for the book is, for years, I have worked with the EcoTipping Points project, a gathering of stories by the world-renowned Dr. Gerald Martin, who, and that's Marten, who has worked on ecological wounds and healings really all over the planet. And in these last years, he's worked on gathering the stories of environmental success, where there's been ecological devastation and then a tip back towards life-enhancing diversity and stability. So I've had a lot of Jerry's thoughts in my mind for decades, and he analyzes these ecological success stories and finds certain patterns that are common to the successes. And those involve often the idea of an insider-outsider, someone that brings outside thinking but has enough intimacy with the problem to have insider insight. And as Pinboy wrote herself into my story, I realized that she was exactly that. And the other thing, Jerry has observed that these environmental success stories often involve finding levers that allow nature to do most of the work. Like, we cannot fix the environment thing by main force, but if we can find the levers that will tip things in the right direction, turn the vicious cycles into virtuous cycles, then we can invite healing in small and large systems. So that became very much part of the book. And then lots of little individual gifts. I remember Richard Carrier in New Orleans years ago told me about how birds of prey in the mountains sometimes just knock large prey off, so they fall and, break their neck or break a leg and become edible to birds that are much smaller than them. And of course that got in, and I needed to figure out how a tree, how people with only stone tools could take down a tree. I learned that from a friend in the Aboriginal technology community, Jeff Gottlieb, who just told me a bunch of ways. So I guess I've gathered the sparks for this book over a lifetime of adventures and conversations and studies and stories that I've imbibed from many, many places. And so grateful. And it's one of the interesting illnesses of creative writers is that when we read our own work, we realize we didn't create any of it, and there's a real imposter syndrome for us because we know where we got things from. We know that we are like the mockingbirds that take a little bit of song from here, a little bit from there, a little bit from this other place, none of it original, and we just string it together in new strands that help people be able to take it in afresh.
I really like the framing that you have on that with imposter syndrome and the knowledge that everyone does that. I think the way in which we weave things and the craft with which we weave them is really the gift that we bring to these familiar things. I am fascinated by all the different pieces to your puzzle that you uniquely pulled together for your story. That's also part of the craft, is your life and all of those different little sparks that you saw that inspired this. And I have one more question about the inspirational part for this. Emotionally, what was the inspiration for this story? What was the emotional drive, that particular, not necessarily factual thing, but the drive to do this story?
I think it was several levels. I think it was grieving for the earth. I think everyone who is awake now realizes that our ecosystems are direly sick. And maybe fatally sick. But that is sometimes just something too big to grieve. You might grieve one little corner of it. One tree that gets cut down can reduce you to gasping sobs. But we have small ways that the grief can emerge. Another part that I think is very present in this, and this is a much younger part for me, is the issue of being culturally uprooted. I was born in Mexico and moved back and forth from Mexico to the United States a number of times. And I guess the most prominent for me was when I went back to Mexico and started school there as a child who did not speak English. And then a few years later, came back to the United States as a child who did speak English, but with a very heavy Spanish accent. And I think that cultural uprooting is definitely present in Pinpoy's bafflement when she gets to this new world, and the pain of isolation of not speaking the language, and the laborious learning of words and learning to think differently is there. And there is another side. I guess this is the opposite of the grieving for the earth. It's the rejoicing in the earth. You know, I spend a lot of time walking in the woods, and I have been just really blessed with a lot of people who have taught me a lot of ways to tune in, to notice, to appreciate, to name. And the joy that gives me is definitely present in the sustainable world of my book, the world that in the book is known as the real, Pinpoy's original world. And I think there's also something there about mothering. I have no children. And this book has a lot to do with mothering and the multiple ways that humans become mothers. You know, it's not always about bearing and raising children of the body. There are aspects of mothering that are done in many different contexts, including the transhuman mothering of the planet, the system, the great mother that feeds us all.
Mm-hmm. I think that's definitely can be felt in the story, especially in the beginning, where they're connected to nature and working with the systems of nature. This is just fascinating. I love hearing how your life is woven. Talk about the strands. It is literally woven throughout this book in such a beautiful way. I deeply appreciate you sharing all of those, because I have known you for a long time, but I did not know all of those different things. And so it's a real pleasure for me to get to hear all of this from you as the story behind the story. It's beautiful.
It's a joy for me to share as well, you know? And to actually look down inside and see what the answer to these questions are.
Well, I have another question for you.
All right.
Once you start feeling these inspirations, what is your process of going from inspiration to getting in there and writing and seeing this larger work take shape, like when you know it's a larger work versus a short story, and all of those kind of going from inspiration to walking the journey of doing the larger creative work? And we will get the answer to that question in the next episode of Vita COLITUR, with part 2 of my interview with Donna Glee Williams, which leads into Donna Glee's process and practice of taking inspiration and moving it into a creative work. Next up is the creative expression portion of this episode, and I'm going to include one of my songs from the EP, Songs for the Night Field, with the visualizer I created. This is the main track, titled Night Field. The music and lyrics were written by me, and it was co-produced with my amazing husband, Chris Rosser, in his Hollow Reed Arts studio. He performed all the instruments for the EP for me and took the ideas that I had for what I heard in my head and helped co-create the mood, style, and heart of the songs. I couldn't have done it without him. And coming up after that will be the challenge for this episode. I hope you'll find some inspiration in taking part in that. And now, Nightfield.
Is more than the night, in this dead time where so much has been broken, in this colorless cruelty, confusion, deadly spite. I can still hear my true name where it's spoken. I reach into my skin under the surface, connect again. Subjugated life, sister, mother, father, brother, how will we survive in the night field? I can still see the stars and I can feel you, my people. Hope still lives in the dark, wrapped in the flow of what is real. I can thrive and I can heal while they try to bury my heart in the night field. I let it all go to the flow of love, the oneness of our being, the roots they hold me, the roots they carry me, the dreams they haunt me. I feel the cry of subjugated life, sister, mother, father, brother, how will we survive? Still see the stars.
There's only one challenge in this episode. That is to set up an inspiration journal, specifically to capture your sparks for stars. Your dreams, quotes, overheard conversations, bits of knowledge that strike you as interesting or quirky, uplifting or haunting, whatever held your attention. You can use photographs, sketches, clippings, scrapbooking, whatever you like, or you can just write stuff down. If you already journal daily, you can add a section for this challenge in your current journal and see where these breadcrumbs, as Donna Glee would call them, lead you. Well, that's it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for being here with me. I wish you a beautiful, kind, creative time until I see you again on Vita COLITUR.